wanted to talk a little bit about how we use the form and the tool of the EPN. So just wanted to give you an example that we created, and we can kind of go from there. I'll point out a few things that you need to consider as we move through it, and then kind of why we did what we did. So the first thing, if you notice, it's important at the top, there's just some information we put in. We look at who it is, and yeah, I got a write-up. Most important thing is the date the incident occurred, and then in capturing the date we issued the discipline. They can be different depending on the investigation. So that's the first thing you want to pay attention to. Next boxes are pretty straightforward. We're either correcting or commending. Then we have to look over here to section 2. This kind of tells us where we're at. So there could be a bunch of boxes checked for multiple violations of different things, but as we talked, it's all progressive. It's not typically I do 4 things in this area, 4 things, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 the steps. And depending on the magnitude or the severity of the situation, you could start somewhere different. Also, this does not handle attendance. Attendance is handled separately in most business units. For those that don't have points, then we would talk about attendance under the other category. But for this purpose, we're going to say attendance is not included. So when we do this and we're dealing with discipline, the first thing that we have to really pay attention to is what level are we issuing the discipline. And this comes in where the partnering with HR comes into play. We have to do a file review. So by that, you're saying, I want to issue a write-up to Lewis. What's in his file? And we're going to go and see what's current, what level it was at, and determine if it still applies. The typical rule of thumb that we go by is it's about a year. So anything within a year is still applicable for the next step. So if I was written up in 2000 and you want to issue something in 2021, the progression is probably not there. However, the level is critical. So given this situation that we're about to decide, me and the person issuing the write-up determined that we needed to go to a final written warning level.
Which means it's more significant.
It's more significant and when we walk you through the narrative, you'll understand why. Okay, I'm the HR manager. I work in Hillside. I decided I was going to go to the Ann Arbor branch. Okay? I was operating a forklift and I moved a furnace. In the process, I dropped the furnace and damaged it, as well as struck the dock door and damaged it as well. As a result of my actions, significant product and property damage were incurred. Additionally, I'm not trained to drive the forklifts, nor am I authorized to operate them. I violated multiple pieces of the safety handbook in this. So this is where we work together to make it sound nice. If you get the what we did, we can make it sound nice. So you can see you have a person that's not authorized from the office in a branch that isn't his, operating equipment and damaging property. Not good.
Yep.
The only reason why I'm not at a termination level here is because I had a clean history prior to that. If I had other history items in here, we might be talking a different level and we'd be going a different route. But that was the decision based on the magnitude of the situation. I broke a lot of rules. That doesn't mean that someone the first time they drop a furnace is going to go to a final warning, but it means that in this case, I didn't do it right and I did a lot of things I shouldn't have. This section's important and we help with this. Was I warned before? No, because this tells me a little bit of the history. And verbal can be 2 things. It can be a documented verbal warning on an EPN, or you've had some coaching that you've documented. And one thing I want to point out that sometimes we can't use a tool, but when we can't use the tool, but we're not sure what's going on or we need to make a note of it, an email to yourself with something happened on a date gives you a timestamp. Or if you had a coaching conversation that was maybe casual, hey, on April 4th, I talked to Dave about not using the picker or following this rule or wearing his steel toes more consistently. You have a paper trail, so if we have an issue or it becomes more serious, you've had a couple of verbal points down the road. It just gives you credibility. It gives you something to stand on. So in your case, when in doubt, just create an email from yourself to yourself, and it creates a timestamp, and just put a little narrative of what you did.
And sometimes, Lewis, sometimes you might have a situation where you have a conversation and you also send a confirming email. That would be another illustration.
Right.
Yeah.
So, hey, Dave, just as a reminder, we talked about you wearing your steel toes when you're out of the office. I need you in this area, or I need you to stay in the office. Okay, so yes, that's a great way to do it as well. So moving forward through this document, the next thing is what needs to change. Okay? So this needs to be very specific and clear, and you'll see a section in red, and I'll explain the importance of that as well. I'm not to operate a forklift at any time for any reason until I've completed the training and I'm properly authorized to do so. Okay? It can't be any more clear than that. We're going to spell that out in any situation. What behavior must change? And the second line in red is extremely important for any write-up. No matter what we do on any write-up, we need to have something that says future incidents or policy violations will result in further discipline or additional corrective action or whatever we call it on that day, up to and including termination of employment. I need to be told or forewarned that if my behavior continues, there are consequences. We don't put in a verbal, you'll get a written warning. We put this line because we don't necessarily always go to that if something's more severe. We have to notify an employee in a discipline situation that they're being forewarned of future consequences of inappropriate behavior or conduct. This protects all of us legally, it protects the company legally, and it helps the employee understand the consequences of their actions. So that's really critical and important. If the employee has a response, some do, they're welcome to send it. Your job is not to defend it, diffuse it, disagree with it. Your job is to collect it, and we send it and we marry it up to the file. That may or may not change the outcome, but it will be attached to it, so their statement's there. And then the final piece, everyone talks about the signatures. Do they have to sign? No, an employee does not have to sign. However, that does not mean that they agree or that they didn't get it. So you go and write me up and you know what, Dave, I'm not signing it. Okay, that's fine. That didn't mean it wasn't issued. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist in your file. So you just write refuse to sign, you initial it, the manager signs it, and then there's the second level person. We should always have some witness. Depending on the situation, your director may or regional operations manager may be involved as the second level manager, or you may be doing it under their direction with your assistants. So you each sign it. That way then there's no confusion. If something's super serious, we'll help you on what signatures we need, if we need a business unit leader or whatnot. But the key of it is, I don't have to sign it. Okay, we're not going to argue with you about signing it. We don't care. We don't need to argue with you about signing it. Refuse to sign, manager signs it, witness signs it, we're done. The last step in the process is there's two things you need to do when it's all done. You need to scan it and send it to HR, preferably me, so we can get a copy in the file. And then you need to put the original in plant mail so we can switch it out when we get it. That way, if it gets lost, we have a copy on the file. A copy's still considered issued. The original is perfect, but that way we have it. That way, if something happens before the mail connects with us or something gets lost because of weather or whatnot, we have it in the file.